She fixed a stranger's tire in the pouring rain and never expected to see him again. But when she walked into her job interview the next morning, he was sitting at the head of the table. Before we go any further, if you love emotional stories like this one, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell so you never miss a story, and drop a comment telling us where in the world you are watching from. Your support means everything to us. Now let us get into the story. Her name was Carol Simmons. She was 34 years old. She had warm brown eyes that looked tired even when she was smiling. Her hands were always a little rough from work. She kept her hair pulled back in a low ponytail because she never had time to do much else with it. She was the kind of woman who looked put together from a distance, but was barely holding on up close. Carol lived in a small two-bedroom apartment in Columbus, Ohio. She shared it with her 2 kids. Her daughter Lily was 9. Her son Jalen was 6. The apartment was clean. Carol made sure of that. But the walls had cracks in them. The heat took a long time to kick on in the mornings. The refrigerator made a humming noise that never stopped. Carol had learned to sleep through it. She worked the closing shift at a grocery store 5 nights a week. She made $14 an hour. After rent and groceries and the kids' school supplies and the electric bill, there was almost nothing left. Some months, she had to choose between buying herself new shoes or keeping the Wi-Fi on for Lily's homework. She always chose the Wi-Fi. She wore the same 2 pairs of shoes until they split at the sole. Carol had applied for over 40 jobs in the last 8 months. She had a business degree. She had earned it at night while working and raising her kids after her husband left. She printed her resume on the nicest paper she could find at the dollar store. She rehearsed her answers in the bathroom mirror while the kids slept. She wanted more. Not for herself. She always said that. She wanted more for Lily and Jalen. On a Thursday evening in November, Carol finished her shift at the grocery store and walked out into a cold, hard rain. She pulled her jacket tight. Her car was parked at the far end of the lot. She walked fast with her head down. She was thinking about Jalen's school field trip form that needed to be signed and paid by Friday. She did not have the $12 yet. She was going to have to call the school in the morning and ask for an extension. She hated making that call. She was almost to her car when she noticed the vehicle 2 spots over. A dark gray SUV, expensive looking. One of the back tires was completely flat. The car was sitting low and crooked on the wet asphalt. She stopped. She looked around. There was no one near it. The parking lot was almost empty. She stood there for a moment. And the rain was coming down harder now. She was already soaked through her jacket. She told herself it was not her problem. She had enough of her own. She took 2 steps toward her car. Then she stopped again. She turned back and looked at that flat tire. She went to her trunk and got out the small emergency kit she kept back there. It had belonged to her father. A tire iron, a small jack, a flashlight with batteries that were almost dead. And she got down on her knees in the rain and she started working. It took her almost 30 minutes. Her hands went numb. Her jeans were soaked through to the skin. The flashlight died halfway through and she had to use her phone screen for light. But she changed that tire. She lowered the jack. She tightened every bolt. She stood up, knees aching, hair dripping, and looked at her work. She left a small note under the windshield wiper. It said, "Your tire was flat. I changed it. I hope your night gets better." No name, no number. She did not think about it again. She went home. She made grilled cheese for the kids. She helped Lily with her reading homework. She tucked Jalen in and listened to him say his prayers. She set her alarm for 6. She had an interview in the morning, the biggest one she had been called in for in months. A management position at a mid-sized logistics company downtown. Real salary, benefits, a future she could actually see. She laid in bed and stared at the ceiling. She whispered to herself the way she always did before something important. She said, "Just show up. Just be yourself. That is all you can do." She showed up. She wore her best blouse, the navy one with the small buttons. She had ironed it the night before. She wore her least worn pair of shoes. She carried a folder with 5 printed copies of her resume. She arrived 12 minutes early and sat in the lobby with her hands folded in her lap. And the receptionist called her name. She walked into the conference room. There was a long table, 3 people sitting on the far side, 2 women she did not recognize, and a man in the center. Carol stopped walking. Her brain took a second to catch up to her eyes. She recognized him. Not from television or from a name tag. She recognized the set of his jaw, the way he sat, the dark gray coat hanging on the back of his chair. She had seen that coat the night before. Soaked with rain in a parking lot. He looked at her, and she watched the moment he recognized her too. His name was Daniel Marsh. He was 50 years old. He had built his company from nothing over 22 years. He was known for being direct and serious and demanding. His employees respected him, but most of them were also a little afraid of him. He was not unkind. He was just someone who had learned long ago not to waste time on things that did not matter. That he had left the office late that Thursday. He had driven himself for once because his usual driver was sick. He had stopped at the grocery store for one thing and come out to find his tire flat. He had stood in the rain, trying to remember the last time he had changed a tire. He could not remember. He was about to call someone when he got a work call that he had to take. He walked to the far side of the lot to get better reception. The call took 20 minutes. When he came back, his tire was fixed, and there was a note under his wiper. He had stood in the rain and read it twice. He had driven home on the spare tire that someone had taken the time to put on for him. A stranger, in the dark, in the rain, with no expectation of anything in return. He had not slept well that night. He kept thinking about the note. "Hope your night gets better." 4 words that somehow sat heavy in his chest. And he had people in his life who would do things for him because of what he could give back. He could not remember the last time a stranger had simply helped him because it was the right thing to do. Now, she was standing across the table from him. He stood up. The 2 women beside him exchanged a glance. He said, "Miss Simmons, please sit down." His voice was calm, but something behind his eyes was not. Carol sat. She opened her folder. She placed her resume on the table. As she kept her hands steady, she told herself, "Just show up. Be yourself." He asked her the first question. She answered it. Then the second. She answered that one too. She was good in that room. She was prepared and clear, and she did not flinch. But halfway through the interview, he paused. He folded his hands. He looked at her directly and said, "I have to ask you something that is not on the list." Carol nodded. He said, "Last night in the rain? Why did you do it?" Now the other 2 women went very still. Carol took a breath. She said, "Because it needed to be done, and I could do it." That was enough reason. He nodded slowly. He wrote something down. The interview continued. At the end, he shook her hand. He thanked her for coming in. He said they would be in touch within the week. She smiled. She said thank you. She walked back through the lobby and out onto the street and stood in the cold morning air and let out a long, quiet breath. Like her phone rang 3 hours later. It was the receptionist. The position was hers if she wanted it. She sat down on the edge of her bed. Lily was at school. Jalen was at school. The apartment was quiet, except for that humming refrigerator. And Carol Simmons pressed her hand over her mouth and cried. Not the sad kind. The kind that comes when something you have been working toward for so long finally arrives and you almost cannot believe it is real. She started the job 2 weeks later. The salary was 3 times what she had been making. She had health insurance for the first time in 4 years. Lily got new shoes. Jalen went on the field trip. Carol took down the stack of unpaid bill notices she had pinned to the inside of her kitchen cabinet. And she threw them all away. Daniel Marsh never made a big moment out of what she had done for him. He did not announce it. He did not make her feel like she owed him something. He simply gave her a fair chance. That was all she had ever needed. 6 months later, Carol was promoted to senior coordinator. She hired 2 people onto her team. She was the kind of manager who remembered birthdays and stayed late when someone needed help. She was the kind of person who had always been that way. Now, she finally had a place where it showed. One afternoon, Daniel passed her in the hallway. He stopped. He said quietly, "You know what I think about sometimes? That note. Hope your night gets better." And he looked at her for a moment. He said, "It did." He kept walking. Carol smiled and kept walking too. Here is the truth this story is trying to tell you. Most people walk past. Most people decide it is not their problem. But every now and then someone stops. Someone gets their knees wet in the rain for a stranger they will never see again. Or so they think. The world has a long memory for genuine kindness. You may never know who is watching. You may never know what that one small moment plants in someone. Just do the right thing anyway, not for a reward, not for recognition, just because it needed to be done and you could do it. That is always enough reason.